Hello, and welcome to She Rises, the podcast where women in leadership take center stage. I'm Tiffany O, your host and the founder of Virtual Partner, where we champion humanity in the workplace to build thriving organizations. With over 30 years of experience in change management and servant leadership, I'm here to bring you powerful stories, actionable insights, and inspiring conversations with trailblazing women who are breaking barriers and redefining success. Whether you're climbing the corporate ladder, leading your own venture, or looking for that next level of impact, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to rise. Let's dive in. Now, today I'm excited to have Yannette LeBron with us to join us on She Rises. Yannette is the founder of YL Design Interiors. I was overblown, overwhelmed, and shocked and amazed in all the other words when I went into her home and saw her work and her portfolio. Now, YL Designs is a company born from her passion for the arts and design. And with over 15 years of experience in the hospitality and interior design industry, Yannette has led projects for upscale hotels, restaurants, retail spaces, showcasing her creativity and organizational prowess. Her journey from earning a degree in interior design at the University of Bridgeport to leading major design projects is a testament to her dedication and vision. Let's dive into her journey and discover the transformational insight she has to share. Welcome, Yannette.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Oh my goodness, you look fabulous, and your story is one that we all need to hear. Before we got started, we were sort of chatting about, our similar journeys, both as devoted daughters and caregivers and balancing work and all the things needed to be all the things to the people in our life. And you come out looking as fabulous as you do.
Thank
Amazing.
you.
I love it. Well, today, I thought that we might spend a little bit of time with one another and just really, dive into what it's like balancing everything. I do have like a few rapid fire questions we'll dig into. Of course, I want to hear about your journey. We all do, but we also want to look at and hear what you've been doing to like balance being that entrepreneur, the leader, coming out of corporate and then moving into your own space, and what advice you have for women maybe who are trying to rise up as designers, moving into that world. And I thought it was really interesting. We'll dig into this too for those. I want you to stick around. She's carved out a niche and uses technology to be able to create an amazing business, right? So how do you scale on an idea if you have a skill? I want you to listen for some of those insights that Yannette will share with us in her journey. And then of course, Yannette, I want to make sure if you will we'll put in the chat for everyone or in the bottom of our video where you can find her website. Yannette, can you just tell us really quick where they can just start to scroll and look at some of that while we're chatting?
Yes, my website is yldesigns with an S, interiors.com. And so on that website, you will see the interior design services, and we primarily focus on what we call e-design, which is like a virtual interior design. So you're able to have design help wherever you are in the country virtually. And it's a very simple process, and it really breaks down the phases, the steps, and it starts with a discovery call. So you can always book a discovery call if you have any questions. And we actually have a 25% off podcast 25 coupon code for a service that we call designer on call. So sometimes a person doesn't need like a full service experience, but they might have some questions about their space, want to send some pictures and get a professional designer's opinion. And so we have that 25% off coupon you can use for that service as well. So you'll have the link to that.
Can't wait to do our little Instagram
Yeah.
post with the 25% off when they see your amazing designs. I know everyone will love it. Okay, so let's just dive in really quick.
Yeah.
Rapid fire. What inspired you to sort of pursue interior design? And what
Well,
challenges, did you encounter along the way? I see you're a fabulous woman, so I mean, you got style and flair
Thank
and
you.
class and executive presence, all the things. So
Thank
tell us.
you. So I've always been a creative person into, visuals, aesthetics, and things like that. And so growing up, I was always into, hair, makeup, fashion and beauty, things like that. But once I was in high school looking to, decide what am I going to do with my life and things like that, I always wanted to do something creative, but art didn't seem like a viable idea because they're always talking about starving artists and things like that. And my parents, my parents coming from the islands, I'm Haitian American, and they, weren't too comfortable with that idea. And so I wasn't going to go to the famous, Haitian profession of nursing. And so I'm like, what am I going to do that is creative that I can get paid, for it? And so I did research because at the time, interior design wasn't really, it existed, but we didn't really know about it as much as we know now. And so I honestly had to do research to find what it is. And I'm like, this is what I should be doing. It has all the courses that I, would have taken just naturally, the prerequisites. And it was something that I could work for an organization and actually get paid for it. And so I went to school for interior design. And, this was before it was like big on TV with the HGTV and the shows and all that. Like none of that was really there at the time. And so yeah, and being a minority as well, like I feel like I was one of the first, in that group of people to really get the education and to start my career in interior design.
Amazing. I think there are two takeaways from this that I get. And one is there are stereotypes for our culture, like, and maybe in for your family. If you come from a family of doctors, the expectation is you're going to be a doctor. If you're in the United States and you typically are, and you're an immigrant or a second generation American, maybe those in your culture have always been nurses, like you mentioned, the Haitian stereotype, right? Being able to break that barrier and stop for a moment and listen to yourself. What is it I really want to do, a contribution I want to make? And what are my gifts and talents? And then you try to find an industry that pays you for your gifts and talents. I think that's brilliant, number one. And then two, I think there's this other thing. So that was the second thing. So one was the research, and two was breaking the barrier, cultural barrier that might be there. And we are talking to women in a global workplace. So I want to dig in a little bit. Being a Haitian American, so your mom's first generation
Yes, both my parents.
immigrants, right? To the United
Immigrants. My
States.
parents came in the country in the 70s, late 70s. And so, yeah, we all were born here, besides my oldest sister who was born in Haiti. Yes.
What was the culture like in the home though? In America, but what's that like
Right.
California?
In the home, we were pretty much Haitian, like raised like Haitian. And so there's a lot of experiences that, that I had that aren't like typical for an American person here. And so a lot of things I feel like I experienced a little bit later in life,
Mm.
just because I was more sheltered and things like that, and, very traditional and like, even like I don't know. I think I went to my first movie at like 15, like in a theater, like things like that, or like, just, driving and things very like a lot of rules, like when I could come in, not past a certain time, driving. When I just got my license, I couldn't drive with anyone for like a year just to make sure I'm like safe and before anyone can ride with me. Like a lot of, but they were protections for me. So I was raised a little bit differently, but I'm grateful for how I turned out.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I love that you're able to, I love that you're able to honor your culture, right? And that what your parents gave you, you didn't like cast that aside. It's still very much important, and you're grateful for the way you were brought up. I dialed into that because I'm married to, my husband is the same as you. His mother's from Nigeria. They grew up very much Nigerian in their home, in their home from so the mindset that they have is very different. And I was reading a book called Immigrant by Ukemi Jeter, and she's the first African American female mayor in Ohio. Anyway, she was telling the story of the shapes of diversity in the workplace and how immigrants have grit. and the upbringing and their cultural viewpoint at times makes them harder workers, more committed and focused than others. And so I could definitely see that in you, the fact that you embrace the way your parents were raising you, and look how you turned out. That is grit right there. So that's another takeaway from this conversation is I just celebrate your grit. So, as we sort of talk a little bit about your personal journey and how your background sort of has it influenced your style and approach at all? I know it's influenced like your how you address, growth and personal development, but in any other ways, has your culture and background influenced your design style?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I think in terms of like boldness, but a sense of fearlessness when it comes to interior design. I wouldn't say I'm like, safe when it comes to design. Like I'll take risks with, colors and like, patterns, as you can see, like even behind what I have,
Yeah.
like, I'm not like a vanilla type of person, which I can have, if I have a client where that's more their style, I definitely put the client's preferences first, but I'll still have a flair of my imprint, you know what I mean? And so, but those who like my style will, tend to gravitate towards me as well. So, I enjoy the use of color and texture and, different fabrics and things like that. And so, I think my background, my cultural background has a difference in that.
I
Mhm.
love it. I love it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, let's talk a little bit about practical demands of running a business versus creative ambitions. Because as women, if we're running a business, I think maybe if we surveyed women versus men, we some of us may have a different approach, right? Not saying all
Right.
women and all men are
Mhm.
different, but so how do you balance sort of the creative ambition with the practical demands of running a business in life?
Yeah, well, with the creative demand, like you said, men and women definitely have a different approach. From my experience, the men usually were more concerned about the numbers, like what does that look like at the end of the day, the financial part, but they trusted in terms of the design experience, like working, especially with the hospitality industry and things like that. They were like, oh, looks great, looks great. Okay, how much is this? How much is that? Like that's what they cared about, which for me was wonderful because it gave me a lot of creative freedom. And, but at the time too, when I was working for hotels, you had to get things approved by the brand. So even if the client enjoyed something or liked it, the brand would still have to approve the design. But so, there's that difference when it comes to gender. And many times the women, especially when it comes to their homes, it's very close to them. So they're a little bit more particular with what they like and things like that. But then you find clients too who, they trust your vision and they're willing to take a little bit of risk based on your recommendations, which is nice too, because if they didn't need the help, they wouldn't have, sought you out. So it's nice to find the good balance.
Mm.
But in terms of finding balance with the business as a whole, that definitely, could be a challenge. But for me, having good systems in place, it's really important. And, I also provide coaching services for other designers. And so I feel like, my strength is also in helping them implement their systems and getting organized with their business structure. So when they're new designers and they're just trying to set things up, with their business structure and also in the systems and how to run their business. I'm loving that I'm able to help with that. And so yeah.
That's amazing. This is another, I think, another lesson for us to learn, and that is you've like 10x your gift by creating an offering to model to others how to do it in an efficient way by coaching. So you provide leadership to others who are in this space so that they can be successful. So excellent. I think that's a lesson there. The other thing I heard you say, which was really resonated, was around boldness, fearlessness, and risk. I think it's interesting that you attribute that to your background.
Hmm.
And there's something to say about that, right?
Hmm.
And if you don't naturally have that boldness, fearlessness, and risk, it can create challenges for us when we step into leadership. It can actually hold us back. So
Hmm.
I'm celebrating that you found your voice, that you step into your courage, you're fearless, and it shows through in your design selections, right? And yet it's with grace and elegance. So just wanted to celebrate that with you. I admire that. So what advice would you give to someone who feels like their design career is stalled?
I definitely think they need to really sit down and brainstorm, like, I'm a list maker or a pros and cons type of person. Like, you're seeing it spelled out and really assessing what are the challenges, what would you like to change about the situation, and looking to see, okay, does this mean I need to rebrand? Does this mean I need to pivot in a different direction? Because, a lot of times when we're having a business or we started in a business, we are going what we first think is the right way to go about it. But what is our audience telling us, that they want from us? So sometimes we might think we want to give this, but your audience is saying, no, we want that. And so, you kind of have to not really think so much about what you want, but what your audience wants, even though you might have a ton of experience in what you're trying to offer, but are you around the people who want that offering? So, this is a kind of a journey I've even had to explore myself, because my background was primarily in commercial interiors. Not only did school, put a lot of emphasis more on commercial than residential, but even when I left school, my first job as an interior designer was for hotel design. So I was in hotel design for many years, for at least I would say 7 or 8 years of doing commercial hotels, like new construction. So when I'm on my own now, I'm thinking, oh, I should still be doing commercial interiors or hotel. But my audience and, what made sense for me wasn't necessarily to continue on trying to pursue that type of design. And so, now where I'm at now, it's more like, I've done small scale commercial, but also getting into more the residential and offering the virtual interior. So you're having to, you should be willing to pivot when you need to, and to assess your situation and, what your demand is, so that you can continue to progress.
Wow, I huge takeaway. Tell me if I heard this right.
Mhm.
And you have to also not be afraid to let go of whatever it was that you originally thought you were
Mhm.
so passionate about, but nobody wants anymore, or is
Mhm.
not needed at this time and space that you're in.
Mhm.
Reassess in order to grow to the next level. You have to listen to the noise around you, the voices around you, the voice of your customers,
Mhm.
and pivot. I love you use that expression because pivot, you're not moving off your mark, you're just turning in a different direction. You're
Right.
right, you just
Mhm.
kind of going in a different direction. So standing on your mark, but in it facing another way. And then uh
Mhm.
flexibility, how important it is
Right.
to create scalable systems, right? So
Mhm.
small, and when we do agile practice, we say, oh, small, medium, and large, right?
Mhm.
And in terms of service offerings, you have the same thing, right? So you can scale it up or scale it back. Let's
Right.
talk a little bit about, you mentioned technology and the
Mhm.
virtual piece. I'm curious how you keep your skills up. How do you continue to develop them and stay inspired in this ever evolving world of technology and design?
Yeah, definitely. Based on, for me, it's like the starting point was more so knowing what services I want to provide, and then looking for the systems or the softwares that will support it the best, because there's
Mm.
so many. And, like for instance, there's a program that I use for doing my design work, and, I've grown with them because I saw them, I was amazed at how they were building their business from the beginning. And so they constantly are refining their systems, and I'm continuing to grow with them. But there are also other, softwares and, businesses that are there to cater to design. But when you look into them, they might have features that really aren't necessary for the offerings that you're doing. Or if it's a little bit more complicated, where, do I need to do this portion? Like for instance, we do three-dimensional renderings, but for clients who want that service to see the detailed 3D of the space, but do I need to be the one to create that detailed drawing, in the system that I have? I might not need to. It's, instead of getting that software to do that portion, it's better for me to outsource it to someone else who's quicker than me and, who can really do a quick turnaround for that portion versus me having to add another overhead of a program for me to do it myself type of thing. So you kind of have to analyze, okay, what do I want to do? What's going to be more efficient? What's going to save the most time? Can I outsource it? What parts do I want to take care of? And then what parts I don't. And so that kind of helps to guide me in terms of what I'm willing to invest in technology wise.
I love that. One of the things that really stood out for me was that you're watching the industry to drive where you focus your skills and you grow with the industry. Like you figured out, oh, this company is an industry trend setter. So let me get onto that and grow as they change their technology. Let me change too. So just sort of being open to that. And the last piece, I think, for those of us who are leaders, we're faced with decisions often, whether you're in the workplace or whether you're an entrepreneur. This applies to both. And that is, do you build or buy, right? Do we do it in-house? Do we outsource it? Do we get another talent? Do I delegate that? Your time likely is better spent doing this ideation, this coaching, this thought leadership, and not building a 3D rendering. Get that to get another team member, give that to someone else. But yet you recognize that you're keeping up with the trend and what's happening in the marketplace. So excellent call out. Such an amazing leader for all of us to look to. In your industry, does mentoring and sponsorship programs play a role at all in fast tracking leadership for those that are in your space? Since you were in a structured organizational environment before you became an entrepreneur, what are some of the things you saw happening in the workplace around that?
I must say interior design, I feel like, is a lot of steps behind a lot of other industries in terms of sharing information, mentorship, and things like that. I think now it's starting to step into that, but during the times where, from right out of school in the first, I would say, I don't know, 7, 8 years of being a designer in the corporate world and things like that, there isn't a whole lot of coaching, mentoring, even within the organizations and things like that. It's almost like survival mode type of thing. And especially being a minority person as well and trying to navigate the space as being always the only in the room several times. When I'm like presenting to a board of people who don't look like me and I'm the designer of the space and like, to navigate what that looks like and you're, trying to be confident in that, but then it develops your personality to be like strong because you're having to rely on yourself a lot of times. But I feel like, since COVID, I think it's accelerated in terms of how people are sharing information because everyone was, away, remote. And so there were a lot more podcasts and a lot of interviews on social media. Like that was the first time I saw so many designers who were like me. Like I never saw that really before, like, until the last few years. And just being able to follow them to hear their podcasts online and things like that. And then I was able to go to High Point Market a few years ago and to actually bump into them and meet them. And I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like you guys are here. It's not just me. And so it's, and so now having a network of people where you can learn from and, people are more open to sharing information compared to the way they used to be. So, and even having, I feel like I'm a pioneer in my industry in terms of being a mentor and sharing because like I never saw that, I still don't think I know another interior design coach who's similar to
wow. You got a corner on the market.
Yeah. So, so I'm finding, mentees that are, gravitating towards me because, they see themselves in me. And through my YouTube channel, they're able to find me and also on social media. And even actually my latest mentee, I actually had a coaching call with her yesterday and she found me on Google, I bet. And I was like, oh, on Google. So who would have thought? So yeah, but it's amazing. And I'm really happy to be able to help out in that sense.
It's amazing. I want to go back to your mentor in that space. You talked about finding inspiring yourself
Mm-hmm.
through continuous learning, the research you were doing, YouTube, podcasts, like that was a part of your repertoire. And so that's a lesson that we can learn if we are emerging leaders and we don't have the structure in our organization that's supporting us the way we need it. Until that structure is there, why not find Brene Brown or whoever is the industry leader? Why not begin to listen to those podcasts, watch YouTube videos that create your inspirational go-to safe place? But here's an interesting statistic. You used an expression, being the
Mm-hmm.
only in the room. Whether you're the only woman of color or the only woman or the only woman under 40 or the only, I was talking to another woman. She was the, it was funny. She said she used the expression only. She was not a woman of color,
Mm-hmm.
but she still could identify with being the only. So that expression, according to leanin.org, 1 in 5 women say that they are often the only or one of the only women in the room at work.
Mm-hmm.
And that scenario seems to be twice as common for senior level women in technical roles like you, with around 40% of them experiencing this situation. So that statistic, when I heard you say it, a light bulb went off like, wow, this is why we have She Rises. This is why we're talking about it so that women can feel confident. But I want to go back to something you said, and that was that situation made you strong.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about it made you pioneering, to have this pioneering spirit. But I want to call out women, if you're watching this, see, she's used to being in front of boards. She's used to being in a boardroom presenting her ideas. And you need, what was that word you said you had to have to stand in front of them and do your thing?
Well, confidence.
Confidence.
Yeah.
Where did you
Mhm.
find confidence? It sounds like your background gave it to you, right? You said bold. You said a part of your culture is like bold and fearless.
Yeah.
Like, but what if that? Where
Hmm.
where do you muster that up if that's not a part of your culture?
Well, honestly, because even though part of my culture is that, but I think I'm actually an introvert. My nature is being an introvert.
Wow.
So it's finding the internal strength and relying on God too, because my prayers are always first before entering into these meetings, because I
Mm.
can't rely on myself. And, being prepared. So knowing that I did what I could to prepare and rehearsing it in my mind of, okay, this is how it's going to go, and being organized. So and knowing that I deserve to be there because I worked hard to be there. So, but, and not getting tripped up when you see people look at you like, oh, you're the one who did all this, or, oh, you're the one who's telling people what to do. Like there's, there's this one experience I remember, as the hotel was being built, and, we were still having some meetings on site where you had you know, all the shot callers in the room and everything, and everyone there. The construction started, but we're in this room which it's dust everywhere, but we're just talking about the drawings and things. And then I come in and I see, and of course I'm the only but the client representative was there, and we work together every day, so he knows I'm the designer. And so I sit by him and he's so happy, and he was like, and so I think I even put my purse on the ground, and he was like, no, like put it up. Like, so he had so much respect for me. But then, when then I started giving instruction, like, okay, you guys did this, I want you to change that, and like give it. And so to see, you just try not to pay attention to the looks on the face, because they're not expecting you to be the one who drew this, designed this, telling everyone what to do, to redo certain things that, yeah, you made a mistake, change it. So, but, so when you have the client that, is definitely fully confident in what you're doing, and they back you up, so that gives you that extra boldness that you need.
Wow.
Which is nice.
I love it. So, this podcast is about an ambitious goal that I have to shorten the leadership runway for women from the front
Mhm.
door to the top floor in less than 10 years. And in the next 5 years, our goal is to reach 1 million women or to reshape their leadership trajectory. So, is there one way you believe this can happen? We can achieve this in the design industry?
Can you rephrase the question again so I can think of
Yeah.
it in
How
more
how
detail?
do we shorten the runway to leading in design for women? How do we make it so that it doesn't take so long? Like you're an executive coach, right? But you've been at this 15 years. How do we shorten that where women feel more prepared, more confident to lead in the design industry faster?
Yeah, sure. Definitely. I think taking advantage while we're still learning, like in school, in terms of leveraging relationships, which is one thing
Mm.
I feel like I didn't do as much of while I was in school. In a way, I think that it's attributed also to my introvertedness as well, because, I was, very much a good student. But when it came to like the networking outside of school type of thing, and like, branching out to do more internships and things like that. Cause, I noticed a difference too in the ones that did do that, spent, more time connecting with companies outside of school and building those relationships, it paid off as well. So I think that accelerates them when you're able to do that. And so, yeah, I feel like, volunteering in different things as soon as you can within the organization and being part of those organizations, and yeah, building the relationships definitely will help with the communication aspect and the confidence aspect and being able to accelerate quicker.
Oh, wow, that is powerful.
Mhm.
So, one question as we take this conversation more broadly, because we have a global focus,
Mhm.
right? And the workplace is more global because COVID changed everything, right?
Right.
So, as we begin to think about that piece, and your view, how can organizations build design teams that reflect global diversity and ensure like a robust representation of women?
Yeah, it definitely has to be a conscious effort. And, I feel like I was still I feel like in the beginning of my career, I was kind of like the guinea pig with these organizations because I was always the first person. And then when they saw, oh, she's okay, then that's when you started seeing more within the organization. And so I was like the tester. So I think we're getting out of that. But I mean, it has to be a conscious effort for them to realize, okay, because it's so much harder to see us in this space and things like that, to, not necessarily, I guess, to be more open-minded in terms of what they're looking for and things like that. And so, but yeah, I feel like it's going in that direction, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And so definitely, because design will be stagnant if you only have all the same, type of people doing design, but with the variety and different perspectives, that definitely makes the organization stronger and things like that. And, and as I mentioned before, like, I think the leaders need to be more proactive with even the ones that are there to get feedback, or, there
Hmm.
wasn't too much of that where people are asking for feedback or suggestions, and so things suffer when it comes to that, so yeah, but yeah, so hopefully, in the coming years it continues
Wow.
to progress. Hmm.
So there is a strategic, what I'm hearing you say, there's a strategic advantage to enhancing creativity and innovation when you embrace a global perspective. All
Hmm.
right, but now this is as we wind down. I want you to think back to your 25-year-old self. You gave a lot of advice today and what you could have done differently. Maybe this next question is the same or maybe it's different. What would you tell your 25-year-old self? What advice would you give her?
I would say definitely continue to build on relationships, because I realized that how important that is, the relationship portion. And so I think that would have been my biggest advice to myself, to not be shy when it comes to asking questions with, the business owners, and also giving feedback, whether even if it's not really solicited, but being more bold in how the organization can progress. Because when they see that initiative too, then they'll see you differently in terms of a leader. When you are forthcoming with what modifications can be done, when you see something's not working and you're like, okay, this would do better for you, and not waiting too long, because sometimes the leaders, they don't see the nitty gritty, the in the the things that are going on, but you who's doing most of the technical work and things like that know, are able to see and discern things. And so just, I think being, yeah, a little bit more outspoken and also building relationships earlier.
Love it. What's one word of your view that describes your view of leadership?
My view of leadership, I think, is serving others,
Mm,
because if you're not willing to serve others and to really, you know, help them in that situation that they're in or support their role, it's really hard for it to be successful. Because yeah, I feel like, my experience when I was under a leadership, many times what made things not work out for me and to even want to exit the organization is because I wasn't feeling supported. And
mm.
so, being listened to and, taking advice, or like, when there's a situation and you're overwhelmed, wanting to have that support. So I think when that leader is, looking out for those opportunities to encourage, to support, to be of service, to empower, then that's really what makes a good leader.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your insights. Who's your shero? Everybody has their own superhero. Mine's Wonder Woman. That's my childhood one. And then when I became grown, it became my mom and my auntie. Who's
Yeah,
your
I was thinking that too. I think my mom definitely was, because she definitely, like, she had 5 children and was able to, navigate that, but also, she put herself through college while she was raising those children when she came to the country as an immigrant. And, she was a teacher. And so, no, like, she definitely embodied everything that, I'd like to be. And she was always so sweet doing it. Like, she'd be able to manage things, delegate, but always was positive, always smiling, always happy. And you really, she embodied everything I want to be.
Oh, amazing. Okay, books. What books are you currently reading that you would recommend?
Actually, lately I've been more wanting to fine tune the financial aspect of things. And so there's Tiffany Aliche. She's Nigerian. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's a money expert. And so she has a book called Get Good with Money. And so that kind of, I've been, diving in to like
Huh.
see how I can make improvements on the financial end of things. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, I love what you're doing. I love your mission to transform spaces through design. And I can definitely see the impact that you are making. So I'm very grateful for that. As we wrap up today's enlightening conversation, I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to you, Yanette, for sharing your invaluable insights and your personal story and journey with me, trusting us and our listeners with what you shared. I'm grateful for that. Your journey and dedication to transforming spaces through design is inspiring, and your ability to keep up with trends, technology, and leadership skills is encouraging. Everyone at Virtual Partner, we're committed to transforming workspaces into hubs of innovation and inclusivity. And we're on a mission to gather insights and stories like the one you just heard today from leaders around the world so we can better understand challenges and triumphs that they face. Your voice matters, and we'd love to hear from you. So before we go, if you're inspired by what you've heard here today and you want to join us on our mission to empower women leaders, don't forget to participate in the She Rises survey at virtualpartner.biz/how she rises. Participating in this survey is going to help shape the future of future discussions and the futures of women around the world that are in leadership roles. Together, I believe we can create a future where equity prevails and every woman has an opportunity to rise. Thank you for tuning in to She Rises. Stay tuned, stay inspired, and keep rising. Until the next time.
That's a wrap for today's episode of She Rises. I hope you found inspiration, insight, and the motivation to keep pushing forward on your leadership journey. Remember, success isn't about reaching the top. It's about lifting others as you rise. If you love this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other powerhouse women in your life. Follow me, Tiffany O, and Virtual Partner for more resources on leadership. organizational growth, and creating workplaces where humanity thrives. Until next time, keep rising, keep leading, and keep making an impact.